Welcome back to another episode of Hangin at the Reef. I'm your host, Jeff Rich, and today we have a special guest with us, Dr. Cort Chambers, a faculty member in the Department of Cybersecurity at Hawaii Pacific University's College of Professional Studies. Cort has been an important member of the Hawaii Pacific University faculty, where he was instrumental in developing several cybersecurity programs, including certificates and degrees at various levels. He led efforts to integrate HPU into CompTIA and Cisco Systems Global Academic Partners program, enhancing the university's educational offerings. In addition to his work in academia, Cort has made significant contributions to the field of cybersecurity at the state level. He collaborated with the Hawaii State Fusion Center to analyze malware incidents and report findings to federal agencies like the Department of Homeland Security. As a founding member of the Threat Team Oahu initiative, he actively worked to prevent targeted acts of violence. Cort has also trained over 200 first responders in emergency protocols during major events such as the 2011 APEC Summit in Honolulu. His extensive experience in emergency management and homeland security has earned him numerous accolades, including the City of Honolulu's Employee of the Year. We are thrilled to have him here today to talk about what's happening in the world of cybersecurity. Welcome to the show, Cort. So your work involves tracking and researching cybersecurity attacks. I think anyone following the news these days has seen what looks to be an exponential increase in the number of attacks and probably the scope and severity. Is this the case, or is the news media just covering these attacks more frequently?
Well, I think both. We definitely are hearing about more attacks, and there are a lot of attacks happening all the time, and those attacks are increasing on a global scale. We've seen a couple of really massive ones lately. The Social Security hack. I don't know if your viewers, listeners have heard of that, but almost all of the Social Security numbers in the U.S. were stolen just recently, but from a company called National Public Data, which basically they hold all our information and they use it for verification checks to check an individual as background checks. And then we had the big MGM casino hack that occurred a few months ago, where they attacked the casinos in Las Vegas and shut them down for part of a couple of days. One of the casinos, from news reports, had paid some ransom. The other one refused to pay ransom, and so they basically went through a little more rough situation than the other casino did.
That was an interesting case. As I recall the specifics from that, it was really a case study in two different responses to a cyber attack where, if memory serves, it was MGM and Caesars. And I was reported that Caesars paid a $15 million ransom. MGM refused to pay a ransom. And I've seen estimates that say that they lost 10 to 20% of daily revenues, which I'm sure is more than 15 million. But ultimately, that it cost them about $2 billion in market cap.
Right. Yes, and a number that I saw was around $100 million in losses, just from from their customers and from the casino. So they stuck to their training and they didn't pay the ransom, but they definitely suffered for it. That's for sure.
Wow. Well, you've called out a couple of the more recent ones that have hit the news, including the casinos. But can you walk us through, within your research and the tracking of these, maybe one that really stands out, as more representative, perhaps, of the types of attacks that we'll see in the future? You had mentioned a couple in some of our preliminary calls, and I think SolarWinds was one that really was sort of indicative of the types of attacks that we're seeing now and more in the future.
Yes, absolutely. The SolarWinds attack was one of the largest attacks ever in the U.S. It occurred back in 2019, 2020. And basically what they did, this was a very sophisticated attack. They attacked the U.S. government, a lot of our top agencies, the U.S. Treasury Agency, the Department of Homeland Security, actually CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is their entire job is to protect against cybersecurity attacks. They actually got into their systems as well. So this was a huge attack, and it was carried out. It's a very interesting attack. It was carried out in a way that we typically don't see in cybersecurity attack. It was what is called a supply chain attack. And so basically what they did is a lot of these agencies that the Department of the Treasury, the CISA, the Department of Homeland Security, they have very robust protection on their network. So it's almost impossible, or not impossible, but it's very difficult if they were to just try to hack into their network. So what they did is, after doing some research and reconnaissance and analysis, they thought the best way to get into the system is not to attack them directly, to go into one of these supply chain attacks. So what they started doing is, through research, they looked and they found a company called SolarWinds that actually, what they do is they supply a software called Orion. And this is a very interesting piece of software. What Orion does is it allows the threat analysts that work in their security operations center, or a SOC, to basically monitor all the security of the systems on one screen. So it's basically, they call it a single pane of glass. It's referred to sometimes as a single pane of glass. So basically, those threat hunters can see everything that's happening security wise in their systems on this one screen. So Orion, basically, this software, it needs to have access to everything within the system, within the network. So the Russian intelligence officers that were actually behind this attack, they thought that's the perfect software for them. If they can get into that software, they're in the whole system. So what they did is they actually went out and started reconnaissance on SolarWinds. They found that they were building out their Orion platform on a platform called GitHub, which a lot of software developers use. They actually start building the processes on GitHub, and they work with other software developers so they can easily share the processes. So the Russian intelligence services basically started looking for weak spots on GitHub, and they did. They found some weak passwords. They were able to hack into some passwords, and they were actually able to get into the build process. So you can imagine, if you have some software you're developing and building a security software, and you have the hacker actually get into the build process. So that's what they did.
How
So
do they
once they
do
were,
that? What are some of the things that they do to try and, preliminarily research the organization, figure out weak points to enter their platforms? But what are some of those tactics?
yeah, so what they do is they want to get into the system. So first priority is to actually get into the system. And then once they're in the system, and they can do that through a weak password, or they can do that through a misconfiguration of the network. So they can do that through open ports. Sometimes the IT administrators should have a lot of the ports they're not using in their network closed, but sometimes they inadvertently leave them open, and then that leaves an open door for the hackers to come in. But in this case, they did a brute force password. They were able to basically find out what the password is for this GitHub build. And you can imagine, as you're building, once the software is ready for distribution, it's going to be monitored very closely, right? But when it's in this build phase, you have a lot of people working on it, and it may not be as secure as you would like it to be, because it's being passed around by just so many people. So once they're into the system, the next thing they want to do is escalate their privileges. So in other words, and this is often referred to as living off the land. So what they want to do is they want to get into the system. Then once they're into the system, they want to get administrator privileges. And once they have that, it's the keys to the kingdom, right? They can go anywhere within the network, within the software. So as they worked their way into the build, they were Now this is not something that happens over a short period of time. This was actually took place over months, right? So once they were in and they were watching as the developers were building the software and they were actually analyzing, they had a team from resources that I've researched. They had a team of about 1,000 software engineers working on this. Now you can imagine a state-funded run intelligence service with 1,000 highly skilled software engineers focusing all of their attention, you know, 40 hours a week on getting into your software. So the chances of you avoiding that are pretty slim, right? So once they were into the build, they ran some test balloons basically to see if they could drop some software snippets in and see if it was discovered. It they were successful and it was not discovered. So then they gave the green light. Okay, we're in. We can drop our malware into the software. Nobody's seen it. Nobody's detecting it. So the way software is also built, and we know this from your Android phone or your iPhone, you'll get those little updates and it'll say tonight at midnight, your iPhone's going to update, a security update, right? And these come out and oftentimes they have an urgency to them, right? Because they found a flaw and they want to fix it as quick as possible. So they send out these updates. Now, the way your iPhone, I'll just use iPhone as an example. Um, it receives the update from its parent company, right? From Apple. And it's signed with a digital certificate. And this is a very highly encrypted digital certificate. So basically, your iPhone says anything that comes from Apple, and I know it, I can track that it came from Apple. And it's signed with a digital certificate from the Apple engineers, then I'm going to trust. And I'm just going to, you know, uh, integrate it into the system. And that's exactly what happened. So they knew if they could get it into the software build, and they could get it into the software build before it was signed with that digital certificate, then there was a very slim chance that anyone would question it, right? So if you are working for the Pentagon or the Treasury Department, you're doing your day-to-day IT administrative duties, you get software updates all the time, and you get a software update, it comes from SolarWinds. It's the Orion software that you've been waiting for, and it's digitally signed. No questions asked, you just install it. Okay, so once it's installed, and it was installed in about 18,000 different organizations. That's the reach that this SolarWinds has. And some of these corporations, I'll just give you some examples: Google, Cisco, uh, Intel, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of the Treasury, several other major departments within the U.S. government. Now, that means that these Russian hackers, now they have a hold on the system. They're inside the system. They have moved laterally through the system. They've upped their administrative access. And so now basically they control your system. So what they did is at that point, they built a back door. And the back door basically in a network is a hidden door that they can move information or data in and out. So once they have this back door, oftentimes it's very difficult to find these doors, sometimes even impossible. They can exfiltrate information, data on your most sensitive information. And you can imagine how much sensitive information is in some of these government organizations or these private tech firms. So they were able to exfiltrate huge amounts of data. They were able to bring in other malware. And one of the scary parts about this hack is these intelligence engineers, software engineers, are so skilled at their jobs that they can actually plant like software as a booby trap that when they just sit undetected for years, that they could exploit at a further date. And so I think a lot of people don't understand the scale of some of these networks. Like some of the networks, even here in Hawaii, They may have 40,000 nodes, 40,000 devices connected to them. This is everything from printers to cell phones to computers to every single IoT, Internet of Things device that's connected to the network. So you can imagine it's like a needle in a haystack, trying to find some malicious code in 40,000 endpoints. So, and you have a team, a security operations team of maybe 15 people. So you can imagine the challenges for that. So basically they were able to set within those very sensitive networks for sometimes up to 9 months and exfiltrate as much data as they want, learn the systems, right? The intricacies of the systems, how the systems are built, what kind of software they use, so that if they ever want to come back and attack those systems, they have a complete blueprint of those systems available for the future.
I imagine the organization would have to have a complete rebuild of their technology platform to eliminate all that hidden code and those booby traps. I imagine too that, if there are hackers that are getting into, say, government or intelligence systems, say in the US versus corporate systems, that they have two different intents, where the corporations might be to hold ransom and to get paid to get out of that system, where if they're trying to get into government intelligence systems, it might be to be there for years and to keep
Right.
those lines of infiltration open so they can glean intelligence from those platforms.
Yes, absolutely. And what a lot of times with like smaller businesses or corporations, they're after financial gains. And then with these large, just as you said, these large government organizations, they're after intelligence and information. And once they're inside these systems, they can easily um, steal plans for new attack aircraft or military systems, because oftentimes, and this is what's dangerous about our networks today, oftentimes we build our network almost with a really hard shell, so it's like really difficult to get in. But then once you get inside that shell, it has like a soft center. It's like there's no defenses within the system, and they know, like I had mentioned, living off the land, once they can get into the system and they can get administrative privileges. And what a lot of times they like to do is find an administrator and basically clone into them so that they are that administrator. So the system cannot differentiate between the actual administrator and this clone, right? Because they uh, once they have the admin privileges, the system will ask you for your password, your multi-factor authentication. Once it's approved you, you're good. It thinks you're part of the team, right? So that's what they want to do. They want to get in there and they want to become part of the team within the network. And then once they have those admin privileges, they can do really whatever they want. And oftentimes in these corporate situations, first they exfiltrate all the data, they take it all out, and then they hold the entire system. They drop ransomware and they hold the entire system for ransom.
How did the SolarWinds hack end? What was the outcome of that process?
So what they did is SolarWinds was able to so SolarWinds, when they found that there was an attack, they were able to quickly do an update. And they immediately, it was just a couple of days after they found that they had the attack was out there, they were able to put some patches in place, put out some information of what individuals can do to better protect their systems, to install these patches. But as you mentioned earlier, um, even though they stopped the bleeding, right, by putting a patch on, and they were able to maybe clear the software they knew of in those systems, there's going to be they're going to have to spend a lot of months meticulously going through those systems, trying to find what other damage was done, if there's any other software in there, rebuilding databases, taking all the information, that they know that was um, maybe exfiltrated, and comparing it against the backups they had to see if it's the correct information. because some of these intelligence agencies, they'll also go in there and just mix information up, maybe put, uh, you know, information that's not correct in there. So you have to go through, they would have to go through and make sure all the information is intact within the system as well.
Was it just luck that they stumbled across the hack, or was there a systematic process that allowed them to, discover that the problem was there?
Yeah, there was a company, actually, what happened, it wasn't the government that actually found it. There was a company called FireEye. And what they did is they were actually, doing their regular maintenance checks, and they're actually a cybersecurity protection company. So that's their job, right? Is to protect these systems. So they noticed they had two voice over IP phones for one individual. And they thought, oh, that's odd. Why would we have two voice IP phones for that same person? They started looking into it, and then they found the breach. And actually, the hackers had been in their system as well. Now, this is a cybersecurity protection firm, and they had stolen some of their best penetration testing tools. So the tools they used to test systems were stolen by the intelligence services. So once they found out that there was a hack into their system, they researched and did analysis and found that it was through the Orion software. Then they contacted SolarWinds. SolarWinds contacted all their customers, and then they started the cleanup.
Wow.
But
Uh,
yeah,
That
so it was a massive breach.
Boy. Well, Court, you talked a little bit about, some of the corporate data breaches and some of the tactics, methods. What about on the consumer side? What are other tactics or ways that hackers are getting a hold of, say, personal data? We've all heard about like phishing attacks, and what is that, and what are some of the ways that we are vulnerable as consumers to getting hacked?
Absolutely, and we're seeing more and more of that today as well. And often, we think of these hacks, and we think of, well, they're using technical means to get into our systems, and they're going through our firewalls. But in actuality, a lot of the hacks, well, in fact, most of the most difficult hacks are the ones that cause the most damage, or what they call social engineering, where they will make a phone call, or they'll send you an email, and they'll try to get you to click on an email, or they'll send you a text message, and they'll tell you that, say, your Amazon packages has been delayed and they need some more information, so that they can deliver your Amazon package. And all of us have, Amazon packages, and we want them to get there on time. And so many people will click on that and say, oh yeah, what do you need? Oh, we need your phone number, or we need this or that information about you. And then once you give that to the hacker, it just increases their ability to set you up for a very big financial hack. And I can just give you, if you'd like, a couple of scenarios of maybe how they may go about this.
Yeah, we'd love to hear some examples. I'm sure our listeners are interested in learning ways to protect themselves, and what are some of the tactics that might come their way.
All right, yeah. So I spent about 10 years working as an analyst at the Hawaii State Fusion Center, and part of our job there was protect against cyber attacks, research the cyber attacks that were going on in Hawaii, also do a lot of research on cyber attacks that are on throughout the world, and then see if those, Hawaii may be vulnerable to those attacks as well. So I'll just give you a couple of examples that really worked really well for the hackers. One of them is they most of the hacks require some reconnaissance and research prior to the attack, and they're very skilled at this. So what they would do is they may look through the obituaries, and they may find, say, someone's husband who passed away, say an elderly couple, right? And they'll find, like, maybe an elderly lady's husband passed away, 6 months ago or something. So they know, okay, she's single, she's probably living alone. Then they'll go and if a lot of your relatives are like mine, older people have Facebook pages, right? And they put all the kids and grandkids photos up there, and they put their names up there and where they're going to college. And, you can find out so much information about an individual just by going to their Facebook page and looking at what they're posting, right? So you think you have this grandmother who's she's got grandkids and they're off to college, and she's so proud of them and showing all these pictures. So they know the names of the grandkids, they know where they're going to college, they know how old they are, they know all the background, right? They do a little more some Google searches, they can find out this person's phone number, right? Whether it's a house phone or a cell phone. So then they set up their social engineering scam. And I'll just give you an example that was a big one that was going through out through Japan, and it came over to the US also. They would find someone, their target, this elderly lady with the grandchildren. They knew the names of the grandchildren, what college they were going to, and they may call her, say, at midnight or 11 o'clock at night and say, hey, this is the police department. We're sorry to inform you that your granddaughter, she's asked us to call you. She was caught DUI. It's a very serious charge. And she mentioned that she has a scholarship. I'll just give an example, say to UCLA. And unfortunately, we just wanted to let you know that, if she's going to have to pay a fine to get out of jail. And then she's also, if she does not pay that fine within a certain amount of time, the charges will go straight to a judge. And if they find her guilty, she could lose her scholarship. She could be kicked out of the school. She could be embarrassed, and you can imagine a grandmother in their 80s hearing this about their grandchild. And they say, but you can fix this because if you can pay this fine tonight, we don't have to send it to court. You just pay us, give us your credit card, pay us $1,500. She'll get out of jail. It'll kind of all be behind her. It'll just, the charges won't go up in front of a judge. She won't be kicked out of school. So you can imagine an older person hearing this and saying, they love their grandchildren. I can fix this for $1,500 right now. And the hackers try to make it urgent. You have to do it now, or you're going to have worse consequences tomorrow, right? So a lot of these elderly people, give them their credit card numbers. They'll pay and they think they've done something really good for their child, and in actuality, all they've done is paid a hacker. We have other scenarios where they have. If you have time, I'll give you another scenario. Okay, so we work closely with some very large networks in Hawaii. I won't mention the networks, but another hack that was coming across there is they would send an email to every employee. Now, you think an organization that has 30,000 employees, they'd send an email to maybe 10,000 employees, and they would say, your work computer has been hacked. We have been monitoring your activities for the last month. We know that you have been visiting pornography sites on company time, or you have been participating in online gambling sites during the job. So we also have your email list, your company email list, and we also have screenshots from your webcam. And what we're going to do is you can either pay us $1,000, whatever their price is, or we're going to send everyone in your company the shots of the web pages that you were looking at, say if they're pornography or illegal gambling, and we're going to send them web shots of you actually doing the activity. And most people will say, well, I haven't been gambling, right? Or I haven't been visiting pornography sites. And so they just delete that email. But maybe 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 5,000 maybe was doing some of those activities. And now they're freaking out because they fit the scenario, right? So they immediately go and pay the $1,500 or $1,000 in Bitcoin because they're worried to death they're going to lose their job. All their friends are going to find out about it. It's going to be public embarrassment, right? So the hackers, they learn what people are afraid of, and then that's what they go after. And in reality, in this scenario, and we would have this happen often, maybe once or twice a year, and there may be 20, 30 people that are paying the ransom. And actually, we could go to the BitCount account and we could see as it was popping up, you could see the $1,000, $1,000, $1,000 being deposited into these Bitcoin accounts. So people were paying it to avoid this public humiliation or a possibility of losing their job, that kind of thing. When in actuality, the hackers never had control of their computer. They never had their webcam. They just set up this scenario that made the person fell for it, basically.
It
Yeah.
was the moral for our listeners, either delete the email or ask for verification that you
Yes,
have
yes, absolutely.
that
And
content.
we have other scams that are going around in Hawaii as well. Of you'll get a phone call, they'll say it's the police department. You have a warrant for your arrest for, something not attending jury duty or something like that. You can pay now or, be arrested. So people are worried about being arrested. And they. Um, and then they realize later, in the heat of the moment, they just try to make the problem go away. When in reality, if they could just stop and think, and this is what we would tell all of the people at the Fusion Center. We say, if anyone is asking for money, stop and think. That should be a red flag, because what you can do, even if it's actual, maybe you didn't appear to jury duty and you have some kind of warrant, right? You can go down to the police department, you can work it out there, right? But not on the phone at 8 o'clock at night. Someone's asking you. So anytime someone asks you to make a payment and there's a sense of urgency, you should say, stop. If you believe it's real, you could be polite and say, hey, I'm going to come down tomorrow and straighten it out, in person.
Between hackers and defenders, that we're going to be entering an era where it's almost like an arms race, or maybe it already has been. And I have to imagine that AI is going to hit this industry really hard, both with things that help both sides of the equation, hackers and defenders. Can you tell us a little bit about, from your research and studying topic, how AI is going to impact cybersecurity, both on the good side and the bad side of the equation?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things we deal with in our classes at HPU. Um, so there's a couple of scenarios on the hacker side. Basically, they're going to be able to develop much more sophisticated software with much less engineering experience. So in the past, it would take a software engineer or a software developer that was very good at their skill to develop one of these highly complex hacking tools. But now with the AI is so good at writing code and that type of thing that basically it takes that expertise level out of it. So someone who might not be technically skilled can also work with AI and have it develop the software for them. Also, the AI is going to be on the hacker side. It will be able to take a look at networks, basically do reconnaissance on the networks. We call that penetration testing or pen testing. That's what we teach a lot of our students to do in our courses. But basically, they pen test the network to see where the vulnerabilities are, see how they can get into the network. AI is much better at that type of thing than a human would be, if you can imagine, because AI is very, it's in the digital world and it's very skilled at coding and that type of thing. So it can maybe find those vulnerabilities faster than a human can. And maybe it may not be at that stage at this point, but that's where we're going, right? So the AI would maybe be able to find vulnerabilities a little faster. And then it would also be able to develop the tools a little better. AI is also much better at developing very complicated, skilled social engineering scams like the ones I talked about. So, a hacker could just ask the AI, come up with three good social engineering scams I can use against government employees or elderly people, or, another one of the big scams that's going on is actually taking over people's deed to their property, actually changing the name on their deed. And then once the name's changed, getting a huge loan on someone's property. And then, transferring that money somewhere in Eastern Europe or somewhere in the world that our law enforcement agencies can't even go after. And then the homeowner is stuck with a mortgage company, chasing them for a loan they never took out. So you can imagine how just using Chat GPT or Claude, if you've ever played around with them, you can just give them scenarios and say, give me 3 different possibilities or 10 different possibilities. And then it will almost instantaneously give you those scenarios, and then you could pick the one that worked best for you. And a lot of people think also that the tools, these hacking tools are something that you have to buy really expensive on the dark web, or, you have to know somebody who's a hacker to buy them. But in actuality, Kali Linux, which is one of the top hacking tools and penetration testing tools in the world, is offered for free on the internet. You just download it. And then you can go on to a hacker can go onto the internet and into YouTube, learn how to use these hacking tools, and they're in business, and it didn't cost them any money to get in business.
That's simple, my God. In chatting with you earlier about, some of the ways that accounts and privacy are compromised, it does sound like it doesn't have to always be high tech. You cited an example where, people use the same password all over the place. Yes, big corporate finance systems might have protections in place and instances of hacking might be rare, but
Right.
if you're using that same password in a no or low security system from a mom and pop retailer on a website, and you're marrying that with your email address, then that's super simple for a hacker to get into and
Absolutely.
doesn't require much high-tech prowess.
Absolutely. And they look for the people that, just as you said, very good example. Um, they maybe come up with a very sophisticated password, uppercase, lowercase letters, special characters. So it's a really good password, but they use it on everything, right? So they use it on their X feed, and they use it on their Facebook, and they use it on their bank, and they use it on, their local restaurant account. And so what happens is, say these larger uh, institutions like your bank is very well protected, right? But they can hack into that mom and pop store. They can grab those passwords, and they know, it's human nature that we're not gonna try to remember 10 different complex passwords. We're gonna have one or two. We're gonna use it for everything. So they know that too. And so once they get your name and your password, they just look for those people that are not using multi-factor authentication, and they start zeroing in on those folks, doing some reconnaissance, finding out where they bank, finding out what kind of property they own, what kind of their financial status is, and it's very easy to find online. Then they find their cell number. They can set up a social engineering attack, or they can hack into their Wi-Fi, which is really easy to do. I'll just give you another scenario we see a lot is, people, when they set up their Wi-Fi, they'll go to, say, Best Buy, and they'll buy a Wi-Fi router, right? And they bring it home and they push a couple of buttons and plug it in, and it's up and running. And they're like, great, I'm good to go. They don't change any of the default settings. Oftentimes, and many times, they don't change the administrator passwords. So the password for the default setting may be 123 4 or admin, something like that. If they don't change that, all the hacker has to do is they just ping their Wi-Fi and try the password, and oftentimes they get in. Once they're into your Wi-Fi, your home router Wi-Fi, they have the keys to the kingdom, because they can then get into your laptop, they can get into your email account. And once they're in your email account, they have everything, because all of us in this digital world we live in, we have everything on our email, our bank accounts, our financial documents, our health documents, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Emails, sensitive emails you wouldn't want to be that were shared with other people. They find those, and anything they can either use it for ransom, or they can use to hack into our financial institutions and steal, our funding.
Wow.
So
So you called out a couple things that listeners can do to protect themselves. Use different passwords, or if you're only going to use a couple, at least use different ones for your high security, high tech stuff, and then lower tech websites, a different password in case those get compromised. You mentioned two-factor authentication as a critical tool. And I think a lot of platforms now will notify you of an intended login somewhere else as well, and to pay attention to those messages so
Sure.
that you can see if somebody in another part of the world is trying to get into your account. What, and back to AI for a minute and the arms race, in your opinion, does either side have an advantage, or does it end in a stalemate, where it's just,
Yeah.
keeps ratcheting up the stakes?
Yeah, I was doing some research on that, and actually, the cybersecurity professionals uh, had an opinion that the hackers actually had the advantage for several years, but now what's happening is AI is now integrating into our cybersecurity tools to protect our systems. So now it's almost kind of half and half, right? So um, we're using AI tools within cybersecurity to identify risk within the system. I told you earlier, they're able to actually scan a network and look at a network and determine where the vulnerabilities are. We can use the AI for our purposes where we scan it. We find the vulnerabilities before they do and fix those vulnerabilities, right? And an AI system can do that 24/7,
Yeah.
where maybe our SOC personnel are overwhelmed with answering alerts and different things. So we can have automated AI systems scanning our networks, looking for vulnerabilities. They can do threat intelligence analysis. So in other words, they can look at the threats that are happening throughout globally, and these threats are almost like waves. A scenario will work in one part of the country, like for the banking industry, a hacker scenario. And then once it works, you'll see it's kind of spread across the world. Well, AI can do that big picture threat analysis, see what storms are coming, do some analysis on how the hack works, and then relay that information to the cybersecurity professionals so they can better build out our systems to protect from that particular attack.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I'm not a coder. Sometimes I get to pretend or play one on a podcast interview, I guess, now and then. But, as a technical coder, it would seem to me like maybe the defenders might have a slight advantage because of AI's ability in real time to continuously scan billions of lines of code and find new entries or non-conforming entries that raise red flags. So it would seem like hackers got to get super smart about how to insert that coding to make sure that it avoids those red flags and doesn't get seen before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what they can do too is one of the biggest problems we have in a security operations center with the threat hunters is, like I said, you may have 10 or 15 protecting 30 or 40,000 endpoints. They get what is called alarm fatigue. Basically, they have so many alarms, going off on their screens. Maybe this doesn't look secure. You've had an entry over here, and a lot of those alarms are false alarms. Some of them are real, some are false. But when some of these threat hunters sitting in front of a computer screen may go through a couple of hundred alarms per day, right? So you can imagine how tedious that becomes and how, they may become complacent because they've seen an alarm three times. Well, the first two or the first three were false alarms. Well, now the fourth one is real, right? So we know that is um, a, a flaw that, humans have trying to pay attention for long period of times. Well, AI can help with that. It can help with that alarm fatigue by constantly looking at those alarms and determining, is this a real or is this a false alarm or a real alarm, and then kind of filtering out the false alarms and then presenting only the real alarm. So that is also going to, I believe, assist cybersecurity professionals in the future, and summarizing security data, just a whole myriad of things that are not the most important tasks. They're tasks that have to be done, but then will free up the threat hunter's time to focus on the most important threats.
Well, Court, for folks that are listening that are interested in a career in cybersecurity, what academic credentials or professional training is required to enter this profession? Is it a highly credentialed field? Is it just, you can be a superstar coder and never have gone to college? But, give us a sense of how folks can pursue careers in cybersecurity and particularly with our programs at HBU.
Well, I think this is a really unique opportunity time we live in where cybersecurity is a new field. And just like you said, we have cybersecurity professionals coming from all different professions. I've had people in my class that were hairstylists at a beauty salon. I've had people that were medical techs, that are nurses, that are physician assistants. I've had people that were just gamers. They learned online. They taught themselves. So this field, one of the most important things you can get to help you succeed in this industry are these industry certifications. And when we started this program, we did some market analysis and we found that these industry certifications are very valuable for employers. They actually can make the difference between you getting the job and also getting the next promotion. So what we did is we teamed up with Cisco Systems and CompTIA. CompTIA is one of the largest industry certification organizations in the world. So we're a partner university with CompTIA and with Cisco. And what we do is we teach our students the methodology that these organizations use to prepare cybersecurity analysts and threat hunters for some of the top organizations, such as the NSA, National Security Agency, the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, the FBI. So we're using the same methodology. We're using the same training tools. We're using the same industry certifications for our students that these premier organizations use to train their new employees. And we meet with them on a regular basis. We meet with the FBI, we meet with the NSA and other organizations and talk with them about how they're training their individuals. And then we integrate that into our classroom as well. Also, because we're working on with these top industry certification companies, organizations, our material is not old. When you take the courses at our university, you're not using a textbook that's 8 years old or even 6 years old that has old information because cybersecurity field changes so quickly that what we do is CompTIA and Cisco, they update the course material every 3 years. So every 3 years, you have the latest material, so you can be assured that you're getting the most up-to-date training, state-of-the-art training, and not only do you earn your degree at Hawaii Pacific University, but you also have the opportunity to earn these industry certifications. So not only does the employer know you know the technical knowledge because you know the theory knowledge because you've earned your degree, but they know you know that technical hands-on knowledge because you passed that certification exam. And I'll just give you a statistic. The U.S. Department of Labor statistics. We've been watching that for the last few years, and a cybersecurity analyst, when we started the program, was making close to 100,000 per year. That's average salary. Now that number's gone up to 120. So if you get these industry certifications, get your foot in the door, get into these organizations, you can making a very good salary in a short amount of time and have a good opportunity for advancement. And again, those HR, those hiring individuals, when they see those certs, that puts you at the top of the list, head and shoulders above many other people if they do not have the cert. So that's one of the things we're really proud of.
So, and I assume the micro credentials or badges, certificates that demonstrate mastery of those specific skills would be layered on top of a degree in cybersecurity. I know HPU now is offering a master's in cybersecurity available online. Is that the starting point, or are people looking really at their undergrad education and focusing on cybersecurity at the undergrad level, then progressing into masters and then micro credentials to master specific skills.
Absolutely. And what we've done, we tried to build out our associate, bachelor's, and master's program. We also added a certificate program. This is for people that they may not, in our current society, some people say, I don't want a college degree. Some folks do. And then so this gives them the opportunity to get 4 of these certifications, these industry certifications, without actually even having a degree. So if they're the type of person that they're self-taught, they enjoy that kind of thing, they're not into degrees, this will give them an opportunity to still get their foot in the door. And what I tell a lot of my students is, if you can get these certifications and you can get a degree, whether it's associate or a bachelor's degree, you can wait on the master's degree. Once you get in, you get your foot in the door, you start making some good, decent money, and then those promotions come up. That's where the master's degree comes in, because you want to move from, making that average salary to adding 20 or 30% to that salary, moving up into a supervisory position. And, all you have to do, and I tell my students this all the time, especially prospective students, just go to Indeed, go to any of your job sites, and just do some searching for cybersecurity analysts and see what kind of salaries come back, and what kind of pay bonuses, and what kind of opportunities you can have. A lot of these are remote opportunities. You can live anywhere in the world and make a very, very good salary and have good chances for promotion. And then if you work for some of the larger tech firms, the pay scale is astronomical. I mean, I have students, graduate students in my classes that are just making really, really good salaries, and they're getting their master's degree to get a pay increase and a job promotion. So the jobs are out there, the opportunities are out there. It's easier now than it ever has been to get into a really good field. And right now, another statistic, there's over 700,000 cybersecurity positions open in the US alone. That's not counting globally. So you
Yep.
can see um, uh, the potential if you just set your mind to, and these industry certifications, they're not easy. So I don't want people to think, oh, they can just breeze through the class. You gotta have to put a lot of work and effort into it. But if you're able to achieve um, these certifications and these degrees, I think you're set up for a really good career.
Yeah, I would agree. This is a fantastic growth field for students to step into, for professionals looking to change careers or
Yeah,
expand their skill sets and increase their earning potential. It's only going to get more intense, and I imagine the need to cross-reference skills and AI is
sure.
going to become more important too. Well, Cort, this has been a great conversation, and before we sign off, where can folks go to learn more about the Masters in Cybersecurity? I imagine visiting hpu.edu and checking out the program and learning more about it, and then maybe even connecting with you if they've got questions would be a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. You can just go to HPU and just type in cybersecurity. It'll bring up several pages. It'll bring up our degree program. You can bring up information about me, and you can reach out to me. My email is there, and I'm always available to talk to new prospective students, or just anyone who's interested in the cybersecurity field. I'm always available during the week to talk to them and help answer their questions. And I'm just personally really excited about this opportunity for people. I've been in this field for a while now, and now it's just opportunities are even getting better.
Well, that's great. We'll publish the links on our show notes so folks know how to get in touch with you. And Cort, we'd love to have you back on the show and talk more as this field continues to develop. So I'm sure in just a couple of months there'll be plenty more hacks
Oh
to
yeah.
talk about and more evolutions in the industry itself to talk about. So
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. Maybe we can talk about how to better protect your personal devices, your personal mobile devices, your Wi-Fi systems, that type of thing. Would be kind of interesting.
Perfect. Well, that'll set up our next conversation for our next episode. Well, thanks for your time today. It was a great conversation. I hope our listeners came away with some good insights into what's happening, how to protect themselves, and also maybe some new interest in a career pathway that certainly is going to be a prosperous one for those that pursue this discipline. So thanks for your time today, and we will be back with you soon, I'm sure.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care now.